In the shadows of drive-ins, grindhouses, and late-night television, a darker breed of monster movie was born. These were not safe creatures or comforting fantasies. They were angry, ugly, and unsettling reflections of real-world fear. Pollution, science, greed, and human arrogance took physical form. Tonight, you are about to enter the creature features you were never meant to see. Number 11. The Legend of Boggy Creek, 1972. The Legend of Boggy Creek does not behave like a normal horror film, and that is exactly why it disturbed audiences. Presented as a docu-style account of a Bigfoot-like creature haunting rural Arkansas, the film uses reenactments, real interviews, and grainy footage to create an uncomfortable sense of authenticity. There is no traditional plot, no heroic confrontation, and no clear resolution. Instead, the film lingers on fear, passed down through generations, whispers heard in the woods, and something unseen watching from the darkness. What made the film so unsettling was its refusal to reassure the viewer. The creature is rarely shown, and when it is, the images feel accidental and wrong, as if the camera was never supposed to capture it. Children disappear, animals are mutilated, and families live with a constant, unspoken dread. This was not fantasy horror. It felt like folklore bleeding into reality. Studios struggled to market the film because it was not quite fiction and not quite documentary. Critics dismissed it, while audiences quietly packed theaters. Its success embarrassed distributors who did not know how to explain why people were terrified by something so crude and minimal. Over time, the film was pushed aside, treated as regional oddity rather than a landmark of atmospheric horror. Boggy Creek survives because it understands something many polished horror films do not. Fear grows stronger when it feels inherited, when it feels local, and when it feels real. This was not a monster you defeated. This was a monster you learned to live with. Number 10. Night of the Lepus, 1972. Night of the Lepus is often remembered as absurd, yet beneath its reputation lies a deeply uncomfortable message about ecological arrogance. The film tells the story of scientists attempting to control a rabbit population using experimental methods. The result is not balance, but mutation. Giant rabbits roam the desert, crushing people beneath their weight and overwhelming entire towns. On the surface, the imagery seems ridiculous, yet the film plays everything straight. There is no humor, no irony, and no wink to the audience. The rabbits are treated as a genuine, unstoppable force born from human interference. This seriousness is what unsettled studio executives. The idea that well-intentioned environmental control could result in annihilation was not comforting in an era already anxious about pesticides, radiation, and scientific overreach. The creatures themselves were difficult to depict convincingly, leading to critical ridicule, but audiences still reacted with unease. The horror did not come from the rabbits, but from the implication that nature was only temporarily under human control. Once pushed too far, it would respond without mercy. Distribution was muted, and the film was quietly shuffled into late-night programming, where it developed a cult reputation. Night of the Lepus was not meant to be a joke. It was meant to be a warning. That warning was simply easier to laugh at than to confront. Number 9. Phase Chaffer, 1974. Phase Chaffer is one of the bleakest creature features ever made because it refuses to let humanity win. The film follows scientists observing ants that have suddenly evolved higher intelligence and collective strategy. These are not rampaging monsters. They are thinkers, planners, and engineers. They watch humans the way humans once watched insects. Director Saul Bass creates an atmosphere that feels clinical and hopeless. Real macro photography shows ants moving with terrifying precision. The creatures do not roar or chase. They surround, isolate, and adapt. Every human solution fails because the ants learn faster than expected. The original ending revealed a future where human civilization had collapsed and a new ant-dominated order had emerged. Studio executives panicked and forced the ending to be removed. Even with the altered conclusion, audiences felt uneasy and dissatisfied. There was no victory, only delay. Phase War was quietly buried after release. It was not violent enough for grindhouse audiences and not optimistic enough for mainstream science fiction fans. Over time, it gained cult respect as a film that dared to suggest the most frightening idea of all. Humanity might simply be outdated. Number 8. Frogs, 1972. Frogs presents itself as a creature feature, but slowly reveals something far more disturbing. The story centers on a wealthy family gathering at their southern estate, surrounded by untouched wilderness. As the weekend unfolds, nature begins to strike back. Snakes, spiders, birds, and insects attack without warning. Despite the title, frogs are not the real threat. They are witnesses. The true monster is environmental abuse and human entitlement. Each death feels like punishment rather than chaos. Victims are crushed, bitten, drowned, and suffocated by the world they believed they owned. The film carries a strong ecological message that unsettled audiences in the early 70s. There is no mad scientist, no mutation, and no single creature to defeat. Nature itself has decided humanity is a parasite. Studios marketed the film as campy monster fun, but audiences sensed its anger. The message was too direct and too accusatory. Frogs was never embraced as a classic because it refuses to comfort. It ends with the idea that this is not revenge. This is correction. Number 7. Squirm, 1976. Squirm is one of the most viscerally upsetting creature features of the era. Set in a small southern town, the film begins with a freak electrical accident that causes earthworms to mutate into carnivorous swarms. What follows is relentless body horror. The worms dissolve flesh, crawl into homes, and pour from the ground in unstoppable waves. Scenes of bodies being consumed alive were so graphic that many theaters refused to screen the film uncut. Audiences reacted with disgust rather than fear, which only increased its notoriety. Unlike traditional monster movies, Squirm offers no spectacle or fantasy. The worms are real creatures made horrifying through proximity and scale. They invade kitchens, bedrooms, and human skin. The horror feels intimate and unavoidable. Censors targeted the film heavily, and distributors struggled to place it. Over time, Squirm became a midnight movie legend, known for pushing revulsion beyond comfort. It was not meant to be admired. It was meant to make you squirm in your seat and question why nature tolerates us at all. Number 6. Empire of the Ants, 1977. Empire of the Ants takes a familiar creature feature premise and turns it into a bitter warning about unchecked capitalism and environmental collapse. The film follows a group of tourists and land developers who become stranded on an island contaminated by illegally dumped toxic waste. That waste does not simply poison the land. It accelerates evolution. Ants grow to monstrous size and develop coordinated intelligence, turning the island into a trap. What makes the film unsettling is not the special effects, but the context. These ants are not ancient monsters or alien invaders. They are the direct result of corporate negligence. The people being hunted are not innocent explorers. They are salesmen, profiteers, and speculators attempting to exploit the land even as it collapses beneath them. The ants do not merely attack. They herd control and overwhelm. Scenes depict humans being paralyzed, carried alive, and consumed slowly. The imagery is grim and methodical rather than exciting. There is no heroic escape, only desperate survival. Studios struggled with the film because its message was too obvious. Pollution causes consequences, and those consequences do not care about human status or wealth. Empire of the Ants was marketed as drive-in entertainment, but it plays like an accusation. That discomfort kept it from mainstream success and pushed it into cult obscurity. Number 5. Prophecy, 1979. Prophecy is often remembered for its mutant creature, yet its true horror lies in how grounded its nightmare feels. Set in the wilderness of Maine, the film explores the effects of industrial pollution on nature. Mercury poisoning from a paper mill seeps into the ecosystem, warping wildlife and poisoning human communities. The creature itself is a grotesque mutation born from environmental abuse. It does not feel mythical or cinematic. It feels sick. Its movements are awkward, its form incomplete, and its existence painful. This is not a triumphant monster. It is a living consequence. One of the most disturbing aspects of Prophecy is its willingness to show innocent victims, including children. A notorious scene involving a sleeping bag death shocked audiences and forced censors to intervene. The violence was not stylized. It was sudden, cruel, and unforgettable. The film was heavily cut and poorly promoted. Studios did not know how to sell a monster movie that blamed industry and offered no catharsis. Prophecy ends without reassurance. The damage is done and cannot be undone. Nature will not forgive, simply because humanity feels regret. Number 4. Humanoids from the Deep, 1980. Humanoids from the deep crossed lines even by exploitation standards. Set in a coastal fishing town, the film introduces amphibious mutant creatures created by scientific experiments meant to boost food production. The result is a violent invasion marked by brutality, chaos, and violation. What makes the film infamous is not just its creatures, but its tone. The monsters represent unchecked experimentation and male aggression taken to monstrous extremes. Their attacks are not quick or symbolic. They are prolonged, disturbing, and confrontational. The director intended the film as a cautionary tale about genetic manipulation and corporate interference. However, the producers recut the film, adding more explicit content against his wishes. This decision turned controversy into scandal. The film was banned, cut, or restricted in several regions, and quickly gained a reputation as something dangerous to screen. Despite its exploitation trappings, the film leaves a lingering sense of unease. Science created something it could not control and then looked away. Humanoids from the Deep was not meant to entertain politely. It was meant to shock, and it succeeded too well. Number 3. Alligator, 1980. Alligator begins with a simple urban legend and turns it into a savage indictment of modern waste culture. A baby alligator is flushed down a toilet after being discarded as a novelty pet. Years later, toxic chemicals dumped into the sewer system cause the animal to grow into a massive predator lurking beneath the city. What elevates Alligator beyond standard creature fare is its tone. The film is angry, sarcastic, and brutally honest about institutional failure. Scientists ignore warning signs, politicians cover up mistakes, and corporations dump chemicals without consequence. The monster exists because no one cared until it was too late. The alligator itself is terrifying not because it is exotic, but because it feels plausible. It attacks weddings, patrol cars, and public spaces, turning everyday safety into illusion. The violence is sharp, sudden, and often cruel. Limbs are torn away, lives end without warning. Studios expected a simple monster romp, but received a cynical horror film dripping with contempt for authority. While audiences responded, the film was never fully embraced by mainstream horror culture. Its message was too close to reality. Alligator suggests that monsters are not accidents. They are policy decisions. Number 2. The Nest, 1988. The Nest taps into one of the most primal human fears: insects inside the home. Set in a quiet coastal town, the film reveals that a chemical company experimenting with pesticides has created hyper-intelligent cockroaches capable of coordinated invasion. These creatures do not simply appear. They infiltrate walls, drains, and bodies. The horror comes from invasion and contamination. Homes become unsafe. Food becomes suspect. Sleep becomes impossible. The film lingers on the psychological toll of infestation as much as the physical danger. The cockroaches are portrayed with unnerving realism. Close-up shots, crawling masses, and sudden swarms trigger instinctive revulsion. Unlike giant monsters, these creatures cannot be reasoned with or escaped. They multiply, adapt, and hide. Studios feared audience backlash due to sheer disgust. The film received limited release and was largely abandoned to late-night cable, where it traumatized unsuspecting viewers. The Nest is effective because it understands that true horror does not need size or spectacle. It only needs proximity. Number 1. Xtro, 1983. Xtro is not just a creature feature. It is a nightmare assembled from fragments of fear, memory, and transformation. The film begins with an alien abduction and spirals into a surreal exploration of body horror, identity loss, and parental terror. The creature in Xtro does not follow rules. It changes form, reproduces violently, and violates the natural order of life. Scenes of transformation, childbirth, and mutation are presented without explanation or relief. The film refuses logic. It operates on dream language. This approach made Xtro deeply disturbing. Viewers could not predict or rationalize what they were seeing. The imagery involving children and alien reproduction caused outrage. The film was banned, heavily cut, and labeled a video nasty in several countries. Xtro disappeared from circulation for years, gaining whispered reputation rather than mainstream analysis. It remains unsettling because it does not seek to scare in conventional ways. It seeks to invade the subconscious. This was a creature feature that did not want your approval. It wanted to stay with you forever. These creature features were not accidents of bad taste. They were reflections of fear, pollution, greed, and loss of control. They were buried because they told uncomfortable truths. Monsters were never the problem. Humanity was.